Today on the Callahan podcast, well, the violence has escalated in Minnesota, in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. Our elected officials are not helping. The police chief quit. The officer who did the shooting, Kim Potter, she quit, but it's not enough. Ayanna and AOC and the rest of the squad are fanning the flames as always. And my girl, Chelsea Handler, with perhaps the most irresponsible tweet of all. Why can't people just cooperate with the police? Simple question. We'll ask. Also, we'll talk to George Price, our law enforcement expert, former BPD, former tactical instructor with the DOJ. He's good. He's a good analyst. And Hank Azaria, you may not know him. He's a voice actor. You'll know the voices he's done and the money he's made doing those voices. But he'd like to apologize if he's offended anyone. He's not going to give back any of his $90 million, but he wants you to know he feels really, really bad. We'll tell you about Hank Azaria and the rest of the people who are making a fortune doing cartoon voices. We'll get to that and a whole lot more. Today's Callahan podcast brought to you by DCU. Do you love your car but hate your car payment? No problem. Refinance your car today with DCU, and they could help lower your monthly payment, lower your interest rate, or both. Applying is easy, and their loan experts will help you find the loan term and the payment that fits into your budget. Get out of that high-rate loan and get the interest rate and the payment you deserve from DCU. Learn more and apply today at dcu.org/refinance. Insured by NCUA, membership required. All right, Colleen, let's go.
This is the Jerry Callahan Podcast.
All right, I'm doing, last night, I'm sitting there doing what I do most nights, sitting there watching fighting, watching looting, watching absolute mayhem. Young people with umbrellas, which is a sure sign that you're Antifa, and they're throwing things at cops, and they're shooting off fireworks, and they're screaming at the police and the media, which I enjoy that when they scream at the media. But as I'm watching and thinking, this is going to get worse, because Derek Chauvin could be acquitted soon. I believe they could wrap it up this end of this week, or he could be convicted on lesser charges, or Kim Potter, the cop who accidentally shot Wright dead, and we've all seen the video, must have seen the video 25 times by now. She's responsible. She screwed up. She made a mistake. It was an accident. There's really no debate. I'll get to the people that wish there were some kind of racist hit put out on the guy, but it's clearly an accident. You can play. There's no jury that's going to convict her on first-degree murder, and everyone who's honest knows it wasn't racist. But as I'm watching, I'm thinking, where are the leaders? We talked about this a little yesterday, but I'm thinking this is a crime. This is embarrassing. This is destructive. Another inner city destroying its own, people destroying inner city businesses and homes, and just destroying the neighborhood. And what you get from leaders, and again, I've said this before, we'll do it again. What you get from politicians, from congresspeople, from mayors, governors, celebrities, you get support for the criminals. You get support for the anarchists and the bad guys. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, you're an elected official. In this case, Ayanna Pressley, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, who wants to, saw this and said, let's get rid of police and prisons. Brilliant woman. But I'm thinking, where is the deterrent, the disincentive? Hell, in some of these places you don't get arrested. They arrested 60 last night in Minneapolis and Brooklyn Center, and I'd be curious to see how long they are in prison, how much the bail is set at. I'm sure they'll all be out today. Again, it wasn't like they wore MAGA hats and trespassed, so they don't actually have to spend a lot of time in prison. And also, simultaneously last night, they were trashing Portland again, setting fire to the police union's hall again. The same people. They get arrested, they get out. No bail, no charges dropped. They do it again. We allow this to happen because our leaders, the people with the influence, encourage it. It's insane. And nobody calls them out. I talk about my crazy Congresswoman, Ayanna Pressley, every day. And She is absolutely part of the problem. Now, I'm not sure what the Boston Globe is writing today or the Boston Herald, but I'm sure they're praising her for something, praising her for making sure, young black guys get the vaccine ahead of old white ladies. That's important. That's her goal right now. But she tweets out, and this was under the radar because Rashida Tlaib stole the thunder when she said we need to get rid of the police, and AOC, as always, stole the thunder, got all the attention when she declared in a tweet, AOC declared in a tweet, this wasn't an accident. This wasn't an accident. You saw the video, you heard the story, you know the details. What does that mean it wasn't an accident? You think this woman, Kim Potter, 26-year veteran, obviously choked, obviously panicked, screwed up. She's quit or been forced out. The police in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, have set up concrete barricades and fencing around her house. Her neighbors are fleeing. They're leaving the neighborhood because they think they're going to burn down her house. She's going to go to jail. I don't think.
I would absolutely leave that neighborhood. I would absolutely. If I had somewhere to go, I would absolutely leave. Yeah,
they're going to get around to her. They're not going to allow her to breathe and mount the defense and go to trial without harassing the hell out of her, maybe hurting her. We'll see. She will be charged, I believe, today, and she will be facing a lengthy prison term. I have no problem with that. She screwed up. It's not debatable. She grabbed her service weapon when she should have grabbed when she thought she was grabbing her taser. She said as much. She shot him. She will pay a price. She is the number one person responsible here. Number two, of course, is Wright himself. I mean, the idea that this guy who was wanted on a warrant for armed armed larceny. He robbed a woman of $800 at gunpoint. A woman, by the way, who allowed him and his friend to sleep at her house after a party. He allowed her, and when he got up in the morning, he robbed her with a gun. And we've seen him posing with guns and money and everything else. He's not responsible as she was. But let's be honest. He tried to run. He tried to flee in a car with a passenger. He resisted arrest. If he didn't do that, he's alive today. I mean, it's not victim.
Nobody wants those outcomes, but if you just kind of try to play by the rules, even remotely, bad things typically don't happen.
If you resist arrest, again, what I asked this yesterday, I'll ask it again. What's the upside? What is the end game that works out well for you if you resist arrest? And I'd say the same thing about George Floyd. If you resist arrest, you're either going to get charged and do more prison time, or you're going to get hurt, or you're going to die. Those are the choices. You don't resist arrest and get away. That's in the movies. I mean, that doesn't happen in real life. There was no way he was resisting arrest, getting in the car, taking off in the car, and getting away. I mean, why is it so hard for people to say that? I know they don't want to appear to be blaming the victim, which is fine. Don't blame the victim. Just ask the question: why didn't he cooperate? Why didn't he, go in and get a lawyer and face the? He'd be alive today. I mean, he might be going to jail because he was out on he skipped bail after robbing a woman at gunpoint. So he might be in jail for a while, but he's 20. I'm sure it wouldn't be long, and he'd be out and he'd be alive. By running away, he led to the series of events quickly unfolded, and he's dead. Daunte Wright would be alive today if he didn't resist arrest. Why can't someone like AOC or Ayanna Pressley or the mayor, the governor, why can't they say that? Why can't they say, hey, kids and men, don't do this. Don't do what Daunte Wright did, even though he's going to be held up as some kind of angelic figure like George Floyd is now, and they'll name a street after him, and his family will pretend he was an angel. It's a fact. If he doesn't take off, he doesn't die. Period. Why is it so hard to say that? But not only do they not say that, they say just the opposite. Some of them say just the opposite, like, if you surrender, if you cooperate, you could die. I mean, I don't know if you saw the brilliant Chelsea Handler's tweet. That got a lot of attention yesterday. I tweeted at my friend Chelsea. She says, literally says, why not run? Why not resist arrest? I don't know if you could, I'll get it up here and read what my girl Chelsea had to say. You're encouraging young black guys to do what Daunte Wright did. Essentially, you're telling them, do this, run away, take off, fight, which is how you get.
You're putting them in more danger. Is what you're doing.
I mean, you're doing the exact opposite of what a responsible leader. And I realize Chelsea's not responsible. She's dumb and she's often drunk. Although this was early in the morning. She writes, why would any person of color ever comply with a police officer when there's a 50-50 shot of getting accidentally shot? Now, is that still up there? She hasn't taken that down.
She's not taking that down. No.
Not taking that down. It's got 23,000 likes. Where do you begin with something that stupid? You're literally telling guys, young people of color, to do something that will get them killed. If Daunte Wright cooperates, if George Floyd was obviously on drugs and incoherent and manic, and he wasn't thinking straight, it looks to me like Daunte Wright thinks, I'm going to get away here. I'm going to get in the car, take off, and get away. I mean, clearly a miscalculation, a deadly one. So you have a prominent liberal, Chelsea Handler, who sees this situation. She's got 8 million Twitter followers, and she says, you know what, I'm going to tell the world, the answer is for you to run. The answer is for you to do what Daunte Wright did. Take off. Why would any person of color ever comply with a police officer when there's a 50-50 shot, you're getting 50-50 shot of getting accidentally shot? Now, it's absurd, the 50-50 shot. It's more like 1 in 50 million shot. I mean, we can go over the numbers. It's very, very rare.
And I could tell you the name of the cop. It'd be Kim Potter is the idiot that would do something like that.
Right, and she's an idiot, and she's already lost her job. It's amazing that she had it for 26 years when she choked like this.
Yep.
But she will pay the price. There's no doubt about it. She will pay a price. She will go to jail, and it won't be pleasant for her. It's more, to me, it's more of an open and shut case than Chauvin, where now we're learning there were all kinds of circumstances that raise reasonable doubt with Chauvin. With this, I mean, she didn't do it purposefully. It wasn't premeditated, but it was an accident, but it was negligent, and he's dead as a result. So she'll do time, and it'll be uncomfortable. It'll be miserable. She's going to pay a hefty price for this. But what price does Chelsea Handler pay for encouraging young black guys to run, which could get them killed, get them hurt, or make them do more prison time than they're already facing? In this case, he was probably going to go to jail, and it would have been longer if they caught him and didn't shoot him, if they just caught him. But what's the upside? It's a very simple question that every one of these people, AOC, Ayanna, Rashida Tlaib, the mayor, the governor, every one of them, Chelsea Handler for that matter, should be saying, do not run, do not resist, comply. Yes, comply. That's what you should do, Chelsea. He got shot because he didn't comply. She says, why would you comply? You're going to get shot. When he complies, he gets shot. But I want to get to this, again, my congresswoman, the absolutely insane Ayanna Pressley, who thinks everything is racist. You know, whatever her breakfast cereal this morning is racist. For some reason, you know, we'll see. She'll tweet out some racist conspiracy theory. But this tweet went under the radar because, again, she always gets overshadowed. She's Ringo. AOC is John Lennon. Tlaib, I don't know. No, Ilhan Omar would be Paul McCartney, and Rashida Tlaib would be George Harrison. And she's Ringo, the lesser-known member of the squad, who really, really wants more attention. So she occasionally tweets and says ridiculous things like yesterday. And this, to me, is so irresponsible, and it's almost like offensive. I don't want to say offensive because I don't feel offended, but it is disgusting. She compares traffic stops to slave patrols. This is right out of the Colin Kaepernick playbook. Cops today who are trying to catch a guy who's wanted for robbing a woman at gunpoint of $825. That guy, they want to catch him because he skipped up bail and they want to bring him to justice. So they pull him over and they are trying to arrest him, and he flees and he's accidentally shot. That's a slave patrol. That's some authority figure tracking down escaped slaves. From slave patrols to traffic stops, we cannot reform this. She writes, I mean, how does that help? How does that help? That I'm sorry, when I see protests like last night, like the last few nights, I'm thinking someone has instilled in these people this real animus towards the real resentment towards authority, towards cops. They just hate cops when we know the last thing a cop wants to do, the last thing Kimberly Potter wanted to do when she went to work was shoot an unarmed black guy and end her career, end her life, or as she knew it. It's over. It was an accident. It clearly was an accident. AOC is lying when she says it wasn't an accident. You know why? Because what else could it be? She intentionally grabbed her gun on video and intentionally executed him. That's what they're saying. Now, if you turn on CNN or MSNBC all day, they're talking about race and how race plays into this. When there's no evidence that it's racist, none. I mean, there's no evidence that she was motivated by race. In fact, I would say it's just the opposite. She's more reluctant to do something like this because she knows the consequences. They all know the consequences. If Daunte Wright is white, we don't even know about it. We don't even care. We don't even mention it. Nobody does a damn thing. God knows AOC, Ayanna Pressley, Chelsea Handler don't give a damn if Daunte Wright is white. This isn't even a story. This is the point we're at with our leaders, with our Congress.
This is how they score political points, right? You don't get any.
It's all that matters.
You don't get any political points for saying it's okay to peaceful. Didn't you retweet a video the other day where they were marching? And listen, I don't condone anybody's messaging when they're marching, but they were saying all cops are bastards, right? So
Yeah,
I don't. Of course, we don't condone that, but they weren't throwing Molotov cocktails while they were doing it. You know what I mean? Like that's if you want to protest, go to town. Just don't throw bricks at people's heads while you're.
Right.
How about that? There's a message.
They threw bricks at the cops, and then when the police chief Gannon did a press conference and called it a riot in passing, the media / activists, the corrupt media, jumped on him and said it wasn't a riot. When the chief knows his officers were attacked with rocks and bricks and fireworks, and as he said, frozen cans of pop, which how you know he's from Minnesota. I guess they call it pop in Minnesota, and we'll get to pop, and we'll get to Poppovich, that fraud. But so they're throwing frozen cans of pops and bricks and rocks at his guys. He just refers to it as a riot in the media and says, "You can't say that. It was a peaceful protest," which shows you, which I thought was perfect, and I laughed out loud because you need to understand just how corrupt the media is. You need to know you're not getting honest coverage of these things. They will say it was racist, even though there's no evidence that it was racist. They will foment this racial strife, this racial violence, because they want everything to be about race. I don't know if I obviously don't read it, but if you ever see the Boston Globe tweets or New York Times tweets, every story, everything, sports, weather, cooking, food, everything is racist. Everything is about race. So they're going to naturally twist it. They're going to lie because they do. That's what they do. They lie, make this about race. And then their go-to is go to the squad who will do the same. They will lie. AOC is lying. Ayanna Pressley is lying. They know it's not about race, or at least they know there's no evidence that it's about race. They make it about race anyway. So this 26-year veteran, this 48-year-old woman who's been on the job, for decades, accidentally shoots someone on video, but he's black and she's not. So it's just like slave patrols, and she'll do it. She'll get 1 million likes and people saying, "You go, you're right. Go get them." And it's like, what? That motivates people. I think that builds resentment, that fuels the fire. That is one of the reasons what's happening now is happening, because people like this, don't just condone it. They support it. At times, they even romanticize it. It is, again, the voice of the unheard. Then you have absolute morons like the mayor of Brooklyn Center, the mayor who looks like he's about 12 years old, or he looks like a pudgy Tiger Woods. As someone said, boy, Tiger Woods has really let himself go. He looks like Tiger, but he's younger and he's pudgier. And I thought the mayor of Minneapolis, that idiot, that what's his name, Fry, Jacob Fry,
yeah,
that child, I thought he was an embarrassment. This guy's worse, at least so far. He does a press conference and he says, I don't know why police need weapons when they do traffic stops. Like weapons. He doesn't even say guns. I mean, I think he's talking tasers and sidearms. I don't know why police need weapons. You can find it. It was pretty prominent yesterday. And on cue, I mean, I did it. Lots of people did it. Retweeted that story from New Mexico when the officer Darian Jarrett was executed, pulled over a pickup truck on the highway, went up, and I guess it was proper procedure to go to the passenger side. The guy says, the shooter, Omar Felix Cuevo, says he has a rifle. It's an AR-15. He says he'll get it, give it up or whatever, pulls the rifle out and just executes the cop on the side of the highway. It's all in high def on the dash cam. You can see it. He shoots the cop once, wounds him. They don't show you this part, which is fine with me. You can hear the gunshots and the screaming. The cop is laying wounded, face down. He comes around the truck, executed him with a shot in the back of the head. And on that day, and I'm check this for me. I think they released the video yesterday, the day before. It's new. It happened February 4th, but it's new. On that day, this idiot mayor says, I don't know. I don't think police officers need weapons to make traffic stops.
The full text of your request and make sure that we sit down and go through it and see how we can implement. I don't believe that officers need to necessarily have weapons. Every time they're making a traffic stop or engaged in situations that don't necessarily call for weapons. We know that there are many other jurisdictions, or even around the world, where that is not, necessarily the case. It's not needed.
He doesn't want cops pulling. I mean, how about highway state troopers in New Mexico? Mayor, Mike, what's his name? Mike Elliot. Yes, Mike Elliot, the Brooklyn Center mayor. So that's the solution. That's the craziness you get. Yesterday, 2 days ago, it was Rashida Tlaib saying no more policing, no more incarceration. That's the reaction you get. Or from BLM, you get when the leaders of BLM aren't, shopping for real estate in the Bahamas, they are saying, let's get rid of the cops. Is that any sane person's reaction to when they see something like this? Is we need fewer cops? When they see a dollar store, a Dollar Tree, not just looted, but burned. Someone said, and someone made a good point. When you watch the video of them trashing the Dollar Tree and then setting it on fire, it's not enough to trash it. Let's burn it. A place probably owned by somebody in that community. Everyone working there is probably in that community. The people who patronize it and buy $1 stuff, including food, those people are in that community, probably lower income, probably working class. They can't go there anymore because this absolute scum, the scum of the earth, looters, burned it. And the reaction is, we need fewer cops. How do you make that leap? I find that bizarre and insane that that's your reaction to civil unrest. Or if you're Ayana, your reaction is, we need more of that. But in
fairness, as you're watching this play out, if you think like Keith Ellison came out yesterday in front of that entire crowd and asked people not to throw bricks, what do you think they do? I think more people show up.
Yesterday there was a change in the dynamic. There was as you heard on I think Mike Tobin reported on Fox that 2 nights ago it was locals. Last night it was an Antifa. They move in, they fly in. they're mostly rich kids, kids who went to Evergreen College or Wesleyan or Tufts, and they fly in with their black umbrellas and their black outfits. And they were there last night. There were 60 arrests, which is good. They're actually arresting people who commit crimes. It's a novel concept, but I don't care. Your responsibility as a leader is to discourage this. I know that's asking a lot. That would take courage. AOC, Ayanna, Tlaib, the mayor Mike Elliot, the governor, another moonbat. That would show courage if they literally stood up, like you said, don't do this. Keith Ellison, are you kidding me? Keith Ellison probably is pulling up with a pickup truck full of bricks, providing these guys with what they need. He's such a radical. It's frightening to think where this lawlessness is taking place in a state that has a follower of Farrakhan, a radical leftist, a socialist, as attorney general. It's just that ain't going to help. But if one of these people, if all of them stood up, how about if the squad did a press conference, all four, and said, stop this. This is crazy. It's not the cop's fault. This cop will be prosecuted as she should be. But this isn't about, cops targeting black people. It's not. It isn't. They know it. They lie about it. Just like, and we can get to this fraud, Poppovich, who is he's such an exploiter. He exploits these situations to endear himself to players, to media, to all the woke mob that he knows is part of the NBA, family. Again, players and more media. Players probably don't pay nearly as much attention to this as the media, and they love him. They know there's nobody who knows how to go out and get the attaboys like Gregg Poppovich, one of many leaders out there who came up with this tired cliche. And I know you got it there and you can play it, but by the way, when I mentioned Darian Jarrett, the cop shot dead in New Mexico on the side of the highway, I wanted to mention this. He's one of 97 cops to be killed in the line of duty so far this year. It is April 14th. Happy birthday, Jack Callahan. April 14th. And we've had 97 cops killed in the line of duty. And this is, did you watch the video, Cullinane?
I did.
It was disturbing as it gets. Yeah, the guy's this big ass. This guy, Omar Felix Cuervo, big ass. And he pulls out the AR-15 and executes this police officer, Darian Jarrett, and then takes off, of course, and dies in a shootout with other cops. Didn't kill any other cops. They killed him, which is good. It's a great way for it to end. But one of 97. Last year, do you know how many cops killed in the line of duty? 359.
Wow.
And how many of those guys do you know? How many names? And this includes people run down with cars and beaten and stabbed and shot, of course. But there's a website that tracks them all, and you look at it. It's called ODMP. It's Officers Down Memorial Page, and it tracks them all, and it tells you all about them, and you can learn all about Darian Jarrett and all the others killed in the line of duty. I mean, anyone ever riot for them? Anyone ever lift a finger for them? And I mean, any AOC, Ayanna, I mean, any of them, Chelsea Handler ever tweet about them? I mean, of course not. All they do is say, maybe we shouldn't give them guns, or maybe we should take away qualified immunity, or maybe we should, maybe we should lay them off, like they did in many cities. They did it. Now they're changing their minds, but many of them did it in these cities, and they see something like this happen and say, we should get rid of some of those cops. Get rid of some of them. Who needs them? It's madness. We have just the worst people, the worst human beings as our elected representatives in these places. Coincidentally, these places where there is so much crime and destruction, invariably their elected officials are radical Dems. Like, again, my girl, Ayanna, which fortunately we haven't had the destruction in Boston that they've had in these other places, but we do have a lunatic representing us who thinks cops are just like slave patrols. And she didn't get a lot of attention for that. So today she'll probably tweet out something even crazier. She must be jealous of Gregg Poppovich because Gregg Poppovich never fails to get the love. Does anyone know how to do this better than Gregg Poppovich? Here's what I can't stand, and it's a little thing. I know you're going to play it again, but I heard it from all these political people, AOC, and all these, media people. It's all day long on some of these networks, and it's a tired cliche, and it just keeps happening over and over and over again. It just keeps happening. What keeps happening? That a cop accidentally grabs her gun instead of her taser and shoots a guy wanted for armed robbery. Shoots. I mean, does that really keep happening? We know the numbers. We've gone over them in 2019. We just went over the numbers of cops killed in 2019. Unarmed black guys. It was 13, and I believe all of them were either justified because the perpetrator was doing something like trying to hit the cop with a car, or was trying to hurt the cop, or the cop has been charged. With this case, the cop will be charged. There was 13. I believe the number of public interactions with police is about 750 million a year. You have 13 unarmed black guys shot by police. 13 too many. We all agree this woman was negligent. She will pay a price again. But Poppovich is the reason, and we talked about this yesterday, this poll of Democrats, the majority of Democrats think the number of unarmed black people killed by cops a year is over 1,000. Some of them think it's up to 10,000. And the reason is people, like we talked about, AOC and Ayanna and Gregg Poppovich, who says it just keeps happening over and over again. And Poppovich was trending last night. Is he still trending? He was trending.
He's still trending.
If you click on it, you'll see all the tweets saying, "Oh, I love Pop. He's so great. Poppovich is the best. He tells it like it is, and you go Pop." And this is a guy, again, by the way, a 70-something-year-old, wildly wealthy man with hundreds of millions of dollars, living in a largely white community, gated golf course community in San Antonio. But he, street speaks truth to power, and he speaks for his guys and the players and mostly the media who just adore him. But let's hear Poppovich's brilliant analysis of what went on in Minneapolis the other night.
Just makes you sick to your stomach. It's how many times does it have to happen? And as sick to our stomachs as we might feel, that individual's dead. He's dead. And his family is grieving, and his friends are grieving. And we just keep moving on as if nothing's happening.
Where do you begin? Where do you begin with this guy? It just keeps happening over and over again. We just did the numbers. It doesn't keep happening over and over again. And what are you talking about? We know the circumstances better than usual, more than usual. We know what Kimberly Potter did. We know it. So what is he talking about? It just keeps happening. I don't remember ever seeing something like this happen. And guns, what guns? The cop had the gun. She shouldn't have shot it. Should have shot her taser. But what does that have to do with guns? Other than the gun, maybe that Daunte Wright used to rob a woman of $800, which led to the warrant for his arrest. And we need what? He doesn't ever give you what. It's just, just bitching and whining because he wants Twitter applause and he wants to sound like a man who's really concerned, but he doesn't actually tell you. And now without Trump there to hate, he doesn't even know who to hate. What does he hate? Guns? Oh, those damn guns. He's just the ultimate demagogue. And worse yet is that hair. What the hell is with that hair?
Yeah, I don't watch his press conferences in full. Do you think he's asked about this, or do you think he?
Yes, I think they know exactly.
From a basketball court, like, why did the team play this type of defense in the second quarter, and he just segues right into?
It's a good question. I don't know what order it goes in, but they know they can wind him up and turn him on. They know exactly what he'd say, and he knows that they know, and he knows the media will love him, will eat it up with a spoon if he just gives them all the same old cliches. We got to do something. Enough is enough. It just keeps happening. I want someone to say, what keeps happening? Oh, unarmed black kids getting shot by cops. Well, when have you ever heard of a cop mistaking the gun for a taser. And how about this one? Do you think it was smart for Daunte Wright to resist and try to run? Do you think maybe you could send a message to all, young black guys? Don't do that. Don't do that.
I mean, at least in this situation, obviously we know the facts at play here. She's a dummy, but these are pretty high pressure situations, right? Like, I know they're trained for high pressure situations, but typically things can go wrong sometimes when you're not, you know what I mean? When you're not expecting them to. So I think the data lines up with that appropriately in high pressure situations for cops.
Right. It's amazing she lasted as long as she did and apparently was successful. She was a union president at one point. So maybe that's why she's never been fired. We will hear soon, if we haven't already, about something else in her past that she did wrong. They were going to go through that, scrutinize that, which they should. Good. I'd love to hear more. But I mean, she's going to face the consequences. It's not like there's no consequences to her actions. There's no consequences when you're Poppovich and you lie, or you're AOC or Ayanna and you lie. People, hell, just the opposite. You get attaboys and pats on the back, and people say, "Boy, Pop, he really tells it like it is. He speaks truth to power." And boy, that hair's kind of hip. He's kind of hip. That long gray hair in the back. I wonder what he's going to do without Trump, though, because most of his time was spent, hating Trump. So we'll see. But I'm looking at all the tweets. I love Poppovich. I mean, literally, I love Poppovich. Okay. But there he is. He's the number one trending thing. He sounds off on Daunte Wright and the governor. He goes after Gregg Abbott, of course. But just makes you sick to your stomach. Okay, it makes everyone sick to their stomach. It makes the biggest police supporter and, biggest back the blue guy in the world sick. Makes him even sicker, because this was negligence on the part of a police officer. So naturally, the cops hate this. And Sports Center, Poppovich speaks candidly about police shooting. And then some media guy I never heard of says, "I love Gregg Poppovich." And I love this man. I love this man, and he told not one lie. Oh, yes, he did. He always tells lies. Just keeps happening. What do you mean just keeps happening? He's in Texas. I'm going to guarantee you more cops have been shot and killed this year than unarmed black guys. Just going to guess.
Yeah.
And
we can ask George right now, actually. But, I mean, a lot. We have a lot that listen, Jerry. Can you imagine being a cop right now after incidents like this?
Excellent. Let's bring in our friend George Price, a authority on all things law enforcement. George, it's been a while since we spoke, but I can't think of anybody better. Former correct me if I got. Tell me if I got this right. Former BPD, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And a tactical. What was your title when you?
I was a Boston police officer. I was also a federal agent with DEA for a number of years. I was the firearms and tactical instructor for the Atlanta Field Division of DEA for a long time, and taught courses like close quarters combat and basically physical restraints and all kinds of shooting and all kinds of stuff like that.
Excellent. That's what we want to hear. We get lots of questions. Let me start with this one. The incident in Brooklyn Center, the shooting, the death of Daunte Wright by Kimberly Potter, was a failure of what? Fill in the blank. It was a failure of blank.
Probably continuing training. I mean, you had an experienced officer who was 20 plus years on the job. I mean, your whole life as a police officer is what's on your gun belt, right? So you rely on that every day. Hopefully, you know where to reach when you have to use one of your weapons. I mean, I watched the video. She's screaming taser, but she shoots him. She thinks she has her taser in her hand. Right. I just think that not enough. My guess, not enough, consistent in-service training. I mean, that should never happen.
I wondered that, like, she's yelling, I'm tasing him, and then she goes, "Oh shit, I shot him."
Right.
It would seem to me she's in trouble. Clearly, she's got time, but that would be a pretty good defense against this charge from all these
absolutely. I mean,
politicians who were saying it's murder and it wasn't an accident. Clearly, it was an accident.
Total accident. She was hysterical afterwards. Negligence, yes. Criminal, no. I don't think it's criminal. I don't think she had any intent on committing a homicide that day or even shooting him. I think she thought she was tasering him, and she'll get a full defense, on any charges that are brought against her, on that theory. You watch the thing and she's screaming taser. She thinks she has her taser in her hand. It's a mistake. It's an awful mistake. Is it a criminal mistake? Unfortunately, in our world today, it's probably going to turn into one. 15 years ago, it probably wouldn't have been. It would have been negligence and it would have been ended at that.
Talk about changing times. If that's not a black victim or a white cop,
right? Correct.
You might have a different definition. Have you ever heard of a police officer grabbing their taser by mistake, thinking it's their service weapon?
No, that's kind of a first. Just watching that video, it's tasers are they're not relatively new. They've been around for a while. There's kind of a force continuum. So you're taught you start with verbal commands, then you go to hands-on, then you might go to pepper spray. Back in the day, you'd go to your baton, and then you'd go to a taser if you had one, and then to deadly force. That's kind of the force continuum that every officer's taught. But again, I got to go back to your gun belt. Like, you slap that thing on every day when you go to work. Like, how do you not know where the hell your taser is? I just think something broke down there, whether it was her, boost of adrenaline or whatever. But, and maybe, I don't know what that district is like as far as policing goes. Do they regularly have to taser people? I bet they don't. I bet it's probably pretty rare. And because of that mistake was made. If you go to other places where, officers are more likely to tase someone, they're going to know where their taser is right away. And,
right.
and there'd be a difference, but there's no perfect answer here. I wish I could tell you, what she was thinking, but who knows?
She almost looked like she shot her partner. She was actually training a young guy, a new officer. I think he might've been on the other side of the car, but she actually shot her off. He had to step out of the way.
Right.
And she again was yelling, "I'm going to tase him." All right, tase him. And she's got a gun in her hand. So unfortunately, the narrative falls apart that it was a racist cop executing a young black guy.
When you're in those situations, and I've been in them dozens and dozens and dozens of times, I don't care what color you are. The only thing I care about is right here. What do you got in your hands?
Right.
What are you doing with your hands? That's the only thing that's going to kill me is your hands. Doesn't matter what color you are. So,
you're an expert here. You've studied it. You've seen it. You've lived it. The life of a cop, making traffic stops, which are always scary. I think people like me even think they're scarier than they are, because the ones you see, on Twitter, on video, on the news, are ones like in New Mexico on February 4th, when a police officer, Darian Jarrett, was executed with a
shot in the head. Yep.
He was shot at first, I think, in the chest or whatever, and then when he went down, he shot in the back of the head by a scumbag named Omar Felix Jueves, who took off, and the cops eventually killed him. But the traffic stop is absolutely chilling.
Yep.
And the mayor, Mike Elliot, the mayor of Brooklyn Center, said yesterday, he was talking about police reforms, and you know what that means. How can we weaken the cops? How can we hurt the cops? And his suggestion was, I don't think cops need weapons to make traffic stops. And
let him go.
And that's, maybe there's some things they don't need weapons for, but that wouldn't be one of them.
Never. The motor vehicle stop is one of the most dangerous things you ever do, because you don't know what you're walking into. I can count many, many times where I walked up a vehicle and there would be weapons in it, handguns, rifles, all kinds of things in it. You got people that are wanted for things you don't even know what they're wanted for, who's in the car, or what their intent is. It's one of the most dangerous things you can do, other than going into a domestic dispute where there's an ongoing fight, or you got an active shooter situation. When you're walking up to a car, you have no idea what you're walking into. You have no idea who you're pulling over until you get up there.
It was, I don't know, was it Portland or Seattle, one of those crazy places, said that it's no longer going to send cops to domestic violence calls, domestic abuse calls. They're going to send social workers, unarmed social work, with
it's absolutely ludicrous. Wait till they go to one of those scenes and it turns into, violence, which happens often. And they will be completely unprepared. And you're unfortunately probably going to end up with, new victims here.
Right.
And they're going to realize that, maybe that's not a good idea. You need to, you're taking money away from the cops across the country. What I think you need more than anything, if you're really worried about it, train them more, give them more money, give them the stuff they need. They talk about demilitarizing the police. the only reason that cops have the equipment they have when they go into situations like these riots and you know, in Minneapolis right now and in other cities is to protect themselves. If they can't protect themselves, they can't protect anybody else, right? So you don't pay these guys enough to be punching bags or have fireworks thrown at them or bricks thrown at them or to be shot at. Like you just don't. And unfortunately, I think what you're going to see is guys and women aren't going to want to do this job anymore. They're going to stop doing it, and we're going to be all the worse for it, especially in the big cities. It's going to unravel.
Right. And as you know, we don't have to get into say the qualified immunity is going to lead to a lot of problems. Repealing it, but I thought this yesterday. I predicted yesterday that the chief Gannon, the chief of Brooklyn Center, would
resign,
get fired or quit.
Yeah.
You know, a couple hours later, he quits, and I think people don't understand that guys like him have the years in. They get the pension. He's probably planning on quitting sometime soon anyway because he's put in the years. Same with her, Kimberly Potter. I mean, she might lose her pension, but she's been in 26 years. She wasn't long for the job anyway. So there are a lot of guys like that who are going to say, I've done my 20, 25 years. I'm done. I don't need this. I don't need this hassle. I don't need this risk. Or I don't need people throwing bricks at me. When you see a scene like last night, just say in Brooklyn Center, it was the live video was incredible. The standoff between Antifa and the rest of the scumbags and the cops, and the fireworks and the rocks and the frozen bottles of pop. Do you think the police, when you watch it generally, handle it correctly, or are you sitting there going, "Don't do that, do that"? You know,
unfortunately, because you know everyone's got these magical things called phones now, right? They're videotaping everything, and you know everything you do is watched so closely, and it gets Monday morning quarterbacked, you know, constantly. You know, they're in a lose-lose situation. If they use force, you know, they're going to be in trouble, and if they don't use force, they're going to get hurt. So, you know, we're putting these men and women in untenable situations. No one should have to go out and do their job and tolerate. Never mind the innocent business owners and people that are violently assaulted in those crowds because they might not agree with what someone's saying. I mean, it's you know, it's an absolute mess, and the cops don't, you know, they don't get a break. You know, 25 years ago, if you had situations, or 20 years ago, you had situations like that, they'd go in with force and they'd end it. They'd lock everyone up, and there'd be no one left to throw anything at you because we'd go grab them all and put them in handcuffs and bring them to the station. And guess what? They'd stay there till they posted real bail. Like,
right, that doesn't happen now. They go in.
Doesn't happen.
In some of these cities, they go in for 10 minutes and they're out back doing it again.
We have candidates for president and senators and congresswomen, you know, bailing them out of jail so they can go out and do it again. It's really troubling.
Can't imagine anything more frustrating for a cop, and it's in a lot of big cities. This is in Boston now. We have radical DAs in Boston, Philly, not just Seattle and Portland. When you arrest someone for assaulting you or for whatever, for theft, for looting, you arrest them, book them, you go through the trouble, you know, everything, fingerprint, picture, boom, boom, boom. An hour later, you see them again. Hour later, they're throwing stuff at you again.
Well, I can't tell you. I had I've been a lawyer now for 20 plus years, but I mean, I had one of my old classmates from the academy from Boston who just retired about 2 weeks ago, a senior guy there. And he's just like, I've had enough. It's time to get out. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be subject to this. He was downtown during the riots that we had last summer. And just enough, like it's time to pull the trigger and get out, and, you know, moved on to other things. I think you're gonna see an awful lot of that.
I mean, you're right. It's going to get worse because our leaders, our Congress people, mayors, they're not on your side. They're on the side of the people throwing the bricks, not the side of the cops putting their lives on the line. In these big cities, in Seattle and Portland and in Boston, and they're not on the side of law enforcement. It is scary.
And and they're fleeing the cities because of it. Like, you know, your property values are dropping in the cities. You go in the city now, there's, you know, you can walk up the middle of Congress Street for 200 yards without being hit by a car now. Like, there's nobody there. The restaurants are empty, and who's going to want to be in these places anymore if there's complete unrest? I have relatives in Minneapolis, and they live in residential neighborhoods and literally sit there and listen to, you know, gunshots and fireworks all night long, and they're scared. They have little kids. There's, it's not a good place to be. It's not.
It is frightening. Before I want to get to Chauvin, because that's about to blow, man. That's about to explode.
Yep.
Defense is taken. It's time for the defense.
Sure.
Even though you may have been confused, because part of the prosecution's case seemed like the case for the defense.
Right.
There was even a witness who wasn't cooperating and the defense declared that witness was theirs.
Right.
There was a prosecution was we're going to treat this witness.
I think it was the female. I think it was the female use of force officer. She talked about whether or not you'd respond in a certain way if you had a crowd behind you and they're trying to restrain.
Right. So, is it going as badly for the prosecution as it seems to me from your perspective?
I think they're putting on the case that they have, and I think the defense is now going to do its job. People have to remember that, the defense only needs to get to one person in that jury, and that's it. They'll have a hung jury. And I predict that actually in this.
Yeah, me too.
I think you're going to have a hung jury,
which will be awful for your relatives.
Which is awful because Minneapolis will burn. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's the simple fact of the matter. That's what you're going to see, and probably not just there. It'll be across the country if he's acquitted or if there's a hung jury. Unless the guy is found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to death, it's not going to be enough for the radical left, I don't think, no matter what.
And I think if he is convicted, I've watched the testimony and read a lot, I think it'll be one of those deals where the jurors, and I'm not necessarily blaming them, say, I can't do this. They know where I live. I mean, the New York Times has virtually doxed them.
Right.
The people there, they know who the jurors are. They will track them down, make their lives miserable in some form. I think that's why it's impossible, I think, to get an acquittal, even if evidence is overwhelming that he died of a drug overdose and the knee was on the shoulder and Chauvin. You know what I found out the other day? I didn't even realize Chauvin is tiny. He's like 5'7", 140.
Oh yeah.
Floyd was huge. I mean, he was like 6'4", 6'5", 230. I mean, not that excuses, but you don't realize Chauvin's probably a bad guy. He's probably a nasty guy, but they're putting up a pretty good defense. So, show you that photo with the knee on the shoulder. They're telling you how much drugs this guy's ingested. If they wanted to acquit, I don't think they would. I think the best he can hope for is a hung jury, because these jurors are understandably intimidated, living in fear of the mob.
Yep.
Have you seen a case that should have been moved? I mean, George.
I know. You're absolutely right. There should have been a change of venue. Absolutely. The entire jury pool was poisoned. But, I think that the defense, they're just getting going as far as the work they need to do. And I think they have a medical expert coming on. I mean, they have some compelling evidence on the defense side. Do I think that, as having done that job and trained officers and trained federal agents, did they do things right there? No, I don't think they did it right there. They, at the point he became essentially docile or compliant, they could have done things much differently. 20 years ago, we would have hogtied someone like that was violent. And it's a blunt term, but we basically tie their shoelaces to the handcuffs and let them sit on the ground.
Well, one of the experts said that he could have done that, would have been justified. These cops could have done that. They have a name for it. I forget where you secure the arms to the legs, arms to the feet. And that would have been justified. Tasing him, they said, would have been justified. One of the prosecution witnesses. So, I mean, obviously there was a question of should he kept his knee there for 9 minutes, because he was, as you point out, he was neutralized. He was docile. So he could have, but then they bring up all the drugs he's done and all the, the other
thing too, and I can say this from experience is, you don't know the force that someone's putting on the officers just by looking at, is he trying to get off the ground? Is he trying to push up? I mean, at some point he definitely was not, but you look at them trying to get him in the cruiser. I mean, that's about, that was a violent fight. That was a violent confrontation. The guy didn't want to get in there. And, I think that the people I feel really bad for in this situation is the younger officers that were just, whether they're 4 days on the job or something, have no idea what they're doing. It's great to go through the academy, but, that for all we know, that could have been their first use of force incident they'd ever experienced. And
Right.
now
And Floyd is a big, strong, kind of
strong guy.
maniacal guy at that point where he
Yep.
was a little scary and a little, frantic. And they maybe they panicked, but we'll see as defense mounts its case. It seems, it seemed on Memorial Day last year, impossible to imagine Derek Chauvin walking free, but it sure seems not likely, but possible now. And you're right. A hung jury is the most likely scenario, which will lead to more mayhem.
Absolutely.
And I don't know why it's so hard for politicians, for leaders in the community to say, comply, don't resist, don't run, don't fight, just comply. Right. Let your lawyer handle it when you get to.
Well, I mean, look at the Minneapolis shooting that we just witnessed with this female officer. I mean, the warrant was for armed robbery. You don't see that on CNN or, right. I mean, this was not like, a shoplifting case.
No, he had an air freshener, George. Didn't you hear? He had an air freshener, illegal air freshener. We find out today he robbed a woman of $825 at gunpoint.
Right.
And that's why he was wanted. He skipped bail. He made bail, skip bail. And he clearly was a wanted man who they had to arrest. He made the decision to run. He made a mistake. We all got to agree that you shouldn't do that. Not smart. Should not comply.
You pick up, you can always do what you're supposed to do, right? You're complying, and then take up the fight another day, because you'll have it. If the cops are wrong, you're going to be okay.
Right.
You'll end up with a lawyer, and you'll end up being able to figure your way out of a particular situation like that if it's not what it purports to be when you're there. But getting in the fight with the cops at the time, it's never going to end well for anybody if that happens. So
imagine being a cop in Minneapolis and finding out before Chauvin's trial began, or just as it was beginning, that the city agreed to pay Floyd's family $27 million. There hasn't been a judgment yet, a decision, verdict. They get $27 million of taxpayer money. That was because of politics. They
absolutely.
They wanted to.
And it's a growing trend. I mean, all these cities are writing checks. They want to be done. They want to be done with it. And you've got lawyers out there who, the one lawyer, and I don't even know his name, but he's in every time we have one of these incidents, he's there. And it's the same rhetoric every time. There's been no investigation. We're looking at a few minutes of body cam or something else, and the entire incident is racist. And I've worked with every color and creed of police officer and federal agent, and 99.9% of the time they're not looking at any of that. They're looking at a person who might hurt them, or that's wanted, or I don't.
You got to
care what color they are.
We should all agree, George. This is the last thing they want. The last thing they want is what.
Well, and the other thing is you got to stop doing it, right? So, what you're in your cruiser, you get the call. Like, are you gonna go 100 miles an hour now to get to a call to end up in a situation like that? I don't know. I don't know what I don't know what officers think anymore, but. I'd be in a rush. I bet they're thinking more about it than they used to.
They're thinking, why take a chance? Why stick your neck out? I mean, that's a bad way to approach it, but that's the way it is. George Price, the bio's too impressive and too long to run through the whole thing. Former Boston police officer, former senior special agent with the DEA, and this is my favorite part, senior special agent and tactical team instructor with the U.S. Department of Justice and the DEA. First through the door on more than 100 federal drug raids, and still here. And we're glad you're here.
Thank God.
We appreciate the time and the expertise as always, George. Thanks a lot.
You got it, guys. Have a good day. Take care.
We'll talk to you again after the verdict, and when Minnesota explodes, Minneapolis explodes all over again. It's not going to be pretty, but he's good. He's good. George Price is good on this, and I'm guessing he feels the way most law enforcement does. Their job just gets tougher and tougher every day, and the people making it tougher are the politicians, the mayors, the community leaders, who just don't make these people, these Antifa, these BLM, they don't make them they don't hold them accountable. There's no price to pay. Why not throw a brick? If you're why not set a building on fire in Portland. They'll detain you for an hour. You'll be back on the street. There's no price to pay anymore. And, if you screw up and the cops, shoot you, IANA and AOC, they all got your back. Doesn't matter what you did. Doesn't matter if you resisted. They have your back. But we appreciate.
I'm not calling you a bullshitter or anything like that. But like I know when you say Minneapolis is going to burn, it likely is. But like it hits different when a guy with his experience says, "Oh no, it's going to burn." Like don't even, you know what I mean? Like don't even question it. It's going to burn.
Just imagine this, Cullinane, that. I can't forget acquitted. He's not going to be acquitted because of the threat. The intimidation is going to work, and people, at least 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 jurors will say, I can't do it. My family will be hurt. They will want to convict on a lesser charge. Someone will say, there's no evidence. You get a hung or not enough. Someone will say, I have reasonable doubt. 1 or 2 or 3 jurors will say, I have reasonable doubt. Hung jury. And think of how that works. The jury deliberates for days. And the tension builds, and the protesters congregate, and they come all from all over to Minneapolis, waiting for the verdict. And the verdict comes in. We can't reach a verdict, Your Honor. We are a hung jury. That's all it takes. It doesn't take. He's innocent, and seeing Chauvin walk out of jail and hug his friends and get in his car and drive away. That would be bad. That would be the worst for the community. But just a hung jury will lead to just more civil unrest. I mean, IANA and IOC, they'll be happy because small businesses will burn, people get hurt, property will get destroyed, blocks and blocks of Minneapolis will be in ruins, which will, again, make a lot of politicians happy, a lot of media people, they'll be thrilled, it'll be romanticized, and they'll say it's all about race and systemic this and race. But the people who live there, the people who run the business, the people that matter, the taxpayers their lives will be ruined because a jury couldn't come to a decision. That's all it'll take. And it's going to get brutal. All right, I want to get to one other thing. Let me do Shea. Let me get to Hank Azaria. If you don't know who Hank Azaria is, he's the latest, I don't want to say guy to get canceled because he wasn't really canceled. He kind of volunteered to cancel himself. But he is pathetic. He's your
Drew Brees of the moment.
Yeah, that's a good one. He's let me put it this way. Hank Azaria is on his knees asking for forgiveness. We will tell you about Hank Azaria and others in the cartoon world. Literally in the cartoon world, after I talk about Shea Concrete and what Shea can do for you. Did you know that Shea Concrete is the largest manufacturer of recon retaining wall systems in North America? Well, you do now. In fact, in 2020, Shea set a new company record when they manufactured 178,000 square feet of retaining wall. This is a testament to Shea's legendary teamwork, from engineering to manufacturing to dispatch and delivery. As the guys at Shea like to say, teamwork makes the team work. They do. I've been around them when they say that. Shea Concrete's high-performing precast concrete retaining walls stand up to New England's active climate and come in a wide variety of shapes, designs, and textures to meet your retaining wall needs. So whether you need a residential, a commercial, or an industrial application, Shea has a dedicated team that will assist you with conceptual design, site walks, and installation. Let Shea show you the way. Call Shea Concrete at 800-696-SHEA. That's 800-696-SHEA, or just log on to SheaConcrete.com. We've heard this Hank Azaria story for, I don't know how long now, a few months, actually probably close to a year, when you think about when we were talking about Cleveland, the Cleveland character on Family Guy who was voiced by a white guy, and he apologized and they said, well, he can't do it anymore. It's got to be a black guy. So, and I think the Simpsons agreed that they won't longer have white people do the Simpsons characters. They need yellow people. Oh, you have to be yellow. You have to match the character you do. Anyway, Hank Azaria did Abu, right? Yes. Abu, the Pakistani or Indian shopkeeper, and with an accent and, some stereotypes, but it was going on for 20 years. And it was like all cartoon, or not all, most cartoon characters. There was some stereotypical stuff involved, the way there, often is. We've gone through it with, Speedy Gonzales, and with Pepe Le Pew and so many other cartoons which have been declared after decades and decades. In case of Pepe Le Pew, after 60 years, it was declared racist, sexist, whatever, homophobic, you name it. But Hank Azaria went on a podcast with Dax Shepard and just bled out, just confessed and said he wants to apologize to every Indian person he sees. He resisted this. This subject came up 4 years ago, I believe, when an Indian American comedian, Hari Kondabolu, an American comedian of Indian descent, who first called them out 4 years ago and said it was problematic, and did a documentary called The Problem with Apu. And at the time, I don't think Azaria took it too seriously. Obviously didn't quit. No one did anything on The Simpsons. They didn't change anything. They just kept going. Mac Groening kept cashing the checks, and everyone lived happily ever after. But then pressure mounted. God knows, cancel culture got worse. Everyone, all the stories, Dr. Zeus and Aunt Jemima and everything else got canceled. And Azaria had a epiphany. He decided he wants to go to every Indian person he sees. He said he went to his son's school, and he was talking to an Indian kids there, and he wanted to get their input. Kids, a 17-year-old who'd never even seen The Simpsons but knows what Apu means, and it's practically a slur. All he knows is how his people are thought of and represented by many in this country. So he said he had tears in his eyes. Part of me feels like I need to go to every single Indian person in the country and personally apologize to Hank Azaria.
We have this sound. I want to hear him say that.
Okay, let's hear it.
Yes, my friend, I will tell them that. I said to him, and I'm going to say to you right now, I really do apologize. I know you weren't asking for that, but it's important. I apologize for my part in creating that, in participating in that. Part of me feels like I need to go around to every single Indian person in this country and personally apologize. And sometimes I do when it
buy
comes
them
up.
all a Dairy Queen. You owe every single Indian a Dairy Queen.
Well, I want to talk about this. I mean, look, I want to bring together what we were talking about the last 10 minutes. So there I am. It's 1988, right? And somebody says to me, hey, it was like one line. Can you do an Indian accent? I said, yeah, I think so. And Apu comes out. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, okay. And we all laugh. Oh, that was funny. Okay, good. So that keeps going from there. And over the years, it develops, whatever. Now, in my head was Peter Sellers' performance in a movie called The Party.
Birdie Num Nums.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which was about 1966. And Peter Sellers in brownface. Okay.
Mm.
And doing this really silly character. Now, here's a great example of white privilege, relative advantage. Now, to me, as a 15-year-old, when I saw that movie, at that time, it's 1979, whatever. To me, there's no difference between how funny Peter Sellers is as a French guy as Clouseau, or as a German guy in Dr. Strangelove, or as Harundi V. Bakshi in The Party. It's just funny, right?
Yeah.
Funny is funny, right? So I'm like, great. And I'm a mimic. I'm an aspiring voice guy. And I can do the accent, and I can do Strangelove, and I can do Clouseau. And so there's no difference to me either in that way. I'm like, oh, it's all good, right? So I'm happily kind of homaging this joyous character of Apu. I'm thinking of because it's a joyful performance by Sellers, albeit very.
So you get where he's going. He's going on a long.
He's apologized to every Indian person. He's never going to do it again. And obviously, there needs to be this test for every cartoon character. If you can't appropriate someone else's culture when you do a cartoon, and you can't have any stereotypes, which means half the material's got to go, because lots of acerbic cartoons or comic shows are about stereotypes, and I mean, some I guess are worse than others, because I can guarantee you could do an Irish drunk tomorrow. Is Mo Irish? Because he does Mo. He does a bunch of other names, a bunch of other characters. But here's the point: he's been doing it for 20 years. You know how much Hank Azaria is worth? I looked this up. It's staggering. Hank Azaria is worth $90 million. And you want to hear the best part? There's 8 other voice people who make more than Hank Azaria. I got the net worth of all the voice people. This was a couple of years ago. Hank was only at 83 million. He's now worth 80. He's worth 90 million for doing voices. And he makes 300,000 an episode.
Insane. That is crazy. What a business.
He's 8th. I'll just give you an example. Number 7, Yeardley Smith, worth 85 million. Yeardley Smith does Lisa on The Simpsons. Very iconoclastic voice. She better hope there's no reason that that she's appropriating children or something or yellow. Dan Castellaneta, he's 6. He's worth 87 million. He does Homer on The Simpsons. Hank Shearer, 89 million. He's 5. He does Mr. Burns, Ned Flanders, Principal Skinner. Number 4, Seth MacFarlane. Seth MacFarlane, now he created Family Guy, obviously, and does voices. He's worth 330 million.
Unbelievable.
You know what? Number 3, Trey Parker, half of the South Park duo, 612 million. Number 2, his partner, Matt Stone, 615 million. I'm not sure why he makes more, but whatever. They do voices and created South Park and wrote the Book of Mormon, that awful play, one of the worst. I saw it. It's terrible, but they're still great. South Park is still funny, and they're fabulously wealthy. Matt Groening, 652 million. He's worth.
Well, he created Simpsons, right? He's the
right. He created The Simpsons, but there are 10 actors, voice people, including those creator guys, who are worth at least $78 million. Now, my question is to Hank Azaria. If you were just starting out and you didn't have any money and weren't making 300,000 an episode, would you have walk around and apologize to every Indian person? Would you have tears in your eyes at your son's school and beg forgiveness from Indian or Pakistani kids? I'm going to guess no. It's easy to do now. It's easy to virtual signal now when you're worth $90 million. And it's easy to do this, to say, look at me. I'm too good for this. I'm too good to pay Apu. I mean, quietly in private, when he's sitting there with, Matt Groening or the rest of these guys, do you think he says, this is awful what we did for the last 20 years? Do you think it was racist and awful and hurtful and offensive? Or do you think he says, oh, Christ, these people are coming for me. I better give them what they want. I'll apologize. I'll cry. I'll tell them, we won't do the character anymore. And, let's get back to the show and let's, get my 300 grand a week here. I mean, it's easy for Hank Azaria is my point.
Yep. And first of all, he never got one word about it until that movie probably 4 years ago, right? That was the start, and that probably wasn't even bad. You probably get worse than that on Twitter every single day. And then now it's kind of over the last 4 years, it keeps building and building, where it's still probably not dramatic. He probably doesn't get a shitload of feedback being like, how dare you? But he just, had an epiphany. He's now sober, and he had an epiphany. So
right, that's true. It's part of his sobriety, and I guess that's what you do when you go on with Dax Shepard. It's like an AA meeting, and the person he was talking to works on the Shepard show, and she's Indian or Pakistani American, and he was apologizing to her.
Yeah.
But if you're doing an edgy cartoon, and I would say South Park is a little edgier, and Family Guy too, but South Park is very, very edgy. Do you have to keep track of all the people that you might offend? Because if you're watching South Park, it's like every day. I mean, I was watching an episode, my son's into it, and I can't help. Sometimes I'm like, I don't want to watch, but you can't help but laugh when you get to that point. And they were doing one of their pandemic episodes, and they're in a class, and they all have their, they're in bubbles and the masks on, and they have armed guards to make sure that they socially distance and wear their masks and all that stuff. And one of them starts flipping out. One of the characters, I've been Cartman or whatever, flipping out, says, I can't take this anymore. And he's screaming and he's causing a fuss. So the cops all draw their weapons and shoot, but they all shoot the black kid. They don't shoot the black kid sitting next to him. They all shoot the black kid, and they go, and then they sent him to the hospital, and they said he was hospitalized with the virus. You know, they made many jokes about the virus, but they all shoot the black kid. And I'm thinking, that's got to offend, somebody. I mean, cops, I don't know. That's got to offend. And every 10 seconds in a South Park episode is something that offends somebody. So will Trey Parker and the other guy, will they walk around apologizing to everybody they meet eventually? Is that what we're going to get to?
I don't think so. How much do these television stations pay for these shows? That's the Simpsons lineup that you just mentioned. Like, it's one thing for the guy who created the show to make that much money, but the voice characters to each be making $300K an episode.
I know. Can't they be replaced? I mean, I realize maybe the Lisa Simpson voice will be tough, but they're going to replace Apu or get rid of them. They're going to replace the black voice actors who aren't black with black voice actors. So they seem replaceable. I mean, maybe some are too iconic, like maybe Peter Griffin is too iconic, or maybe whatever, Homer or Bart. But all these, most of what Hank Azaria does are the Moes and the fringe characters. Can't he just be replaced with someone who makes, I don't know, 10 grand a week and not 300 grand a week?
I would think so. How many episodes of the Simpsons is there a season? That must cost them like $3 million an episode just to produce the damn thing.
I guess it's syndicated around the world, so who knows? Those syndicated shows. I mean, Judge Judy makes $50 million a year.
It's wild.
So that's how you make the big dough. But Hank Azaria, I'm sure he's going to give all that money back, give it to charities and give it to poor Pakistani kids because he feels so awful. I mean, it's easy for Hank Azaria. We'll see. The people who get canceled and lose their livelihood, lose their salary, their savings, any chance they have. People, I don't know, like the Sacramento Kings play-by-play guy who's making a good living. He gets fired for saying all lives matter. That guy is unfairly canceled. Hank Azaria, he's virtue signaling. He's riding this and using and look at me. I've had an awakening. Aren't I amazing? He's just looking. He's like Gregg Poppovich, looking for pats on the head. Screw him. Screw Hank. You know what? Family Guys are 10 times better than Simpsons anyway. And so South Park. Anyway, we'll put him on the list of most overpaid people on the planet Earth. $90 million for Hank Azaria. But anyway, let's leave it there. I had a bunch of other stuff to get to, but George Price was too good, and we wanted to get you updated on Minnesota and prepared for the next wave, the next storm that is coming. The defense is mounting their case as we speak. Derek Chauvin's going to get a hung jury, or I don't think he'll get acquitted. I think he'll get a hung jury, and that will be awful. That will be just the worst thing that ever happened to that community, and but we'll stay on top of it. We appreciate it. And thanks to our guest, George Price, just an all-around expert on law enforcement and law enforcement tactics. He was very good. Good job, Cullinane. Thanks to DCU and Allied Paving and Shea Concrete. Thanks to everybody for listening. I'm Jerry Callahan. This is the Callahan Podcast, and we will do it again tomorrow.